The rain had been falling for days, turning roads into rivers and homes into islands. What started as a steady drizzle had now become a furious downpour, swallowing entire neighborhoods under muddy, rushing water. People hurried through the chaos, clutching whatever they could carry as rescue teams shouted directions and pulled families into boats. Cars floated like paper toys, and rooftops peeked out from the rising flood as birds sought higher ground. Everywhere, the sound of sirens mixed with the roar of water crashing through streets and fields. Amid the panic, many believed the worst had already happened, but nature was not finished revealing the stories it had hidden beneath the storm, not far from the main road, where the water crept through fields and broken fences. A golden-brown mother dog searched desperately for shelter. Her fur was soaked, clinging to her thin frame as the rain beat down without mercy. In the crook of an old tree's roots, she had tucked her newborn puppies, tiny, shivering bundles blind to the danger around them. With every crash of thunder, she pressed her body closer to them, shielding them from the cold water creeping into their hiding place. She hadn't eaten in a day, but hunger didn't matter now. Every sound made her ears twitch. Every movement in the distance made her rise and scan the flooded world around her. The water was rising faster than she expected, licking at the base of the tree. She stood guard, knowing that if she didn't act soon, the flood would swallow everything she loved. The water had already swallowed half the street by the time the currents reached the ruined shed where the mother dog had hidden her puppies. Wind howled like a warning siren, rattling rooftops and bending the trees to their breaking point. But inside that cramped wooden shelter, she stayed pressed against her newborns, using her body as a wall between them and the cold, rising murk seeping through the cracks. Each tiny whimper from the litter only made her more frantic, yet she didn't move. Not yet. She waited, watching the water inch closer to their fragile bodies, her heart thundering with instinctive fear. Outside, the river that had once looked peaceful now roared like a monster. Doors banged against house frames. Floating debris crashed into fences. Every splash carried a threat. Rescuers shouted in the distance, wading through knee-deep currents as they searched for survivors. Sirens cut through the wind, but no one had seen the mother dog. No one knew her puppies were trapped in that forgotten corner of the village. When the muddy water finally slithered past her paws, she made her first move. One pup let out a tiny cry as the cold licked its fur. She picked the weakest one up gently in her mouth and looked toward the broken doorway. The path was nearly impossible, sharp debris, moving water, no solid ground. But turning back wasn't an option. With trembling legs, she stepped into the flood. The current tugged at her belly, and every step was a battle against the pull. She slipped once, nearly losing her grip on the pup, but regained her footing and pushed forward. She didn't know where safety was, only that she had to find it before the water claimed them all. The mother dog fought the current with every shaky step, her fur soaked and heavy. The pup in her jaws whimpered weakly, its tiny body shivering with each breath. The water was nearly up to her neck in some places, but turning back was no longer possible. Behind her, the shed was disappearing beneath the rising flood, and her remaining puppies were still trapped inside. Her eyes burned with fear, but her determination never faltered. She found a floating wooden beam and used it to steady herself, placing the first pup on a slightly higher patch of ground by a half-collapsed wall. The puppy let out a faint cry, cold but alive. She paused only for a second, panting hard, before turning back toward the raging water. The current was stronger now, swirling with branches, litter, and broken pieces of homes. But her babies were still waiting in the darkness of that ruined shelter. Inside the shed, the water had reached the nest. The puppies were huddled together, their whimpers drowned by the roar outside. The mother dog plunged back into the flood with a burst of urgency, her paws slipping on submerged debris. She ducked her head under a fallen plank and squeezed through the doorway, shivering as the cold wrapped around her spine. One by one, she gathered the remaining pups, gripping them gently but firmly as she carried them through the water. Her legs were exhausted, and every breath came with a wheeze, but she refused to stop. Each trip back and forth through the swirling current drained a little more of her strength, yet she continued without hesitation. The flood didn't care about courage, but her love for her puppies was stronger than fear, pain. or the rising storm be by the time the mother dog delivered the last puppy to the higher ground near the crumbling wall, her body was trembling from exhaustion. Her breaths came in sharp bursts, her chest rising and falling rapidly. The flood had nearly swallowed the shed behind her. Only the roof and a corner of the doorway were still visible above the churning brown water. The puppies huddled together, their tiny bodies wet and curled against one another for warmth. She nudged them gently, checking each one with desperate urgency. Just then, voices pierced through the wind. A rescue team had reached that part of the village, wading through waist-deep water with ropes and flashlights. One of them, a young volunteer with a bright orange jacket, froze when he spotted movement near the wall. "Over here," he shouted to the others, pointing toward the mother dog and her newborns. The rescuers approached cautiously, unsure if she would react defensively. But instead of growling or backing away, she stood protectively in front of her pups, her body blocking the current, her tired eyes fixed on the strangers. The volunteer knelt slowly, murmuring soft words, extending his arm with an open palm. The mother dog didn't advance, but she didn't retreat either. She simply looked at him, drenched, shivering, but unbroken. Another rescuer unfolded a thick blanket and placed it on a floating board that had drifted nearby. One by one, they carefully lifted the puppies onto it, wrapping them gently to keep them warm. The mother dog watched every move, her eyes alert but calm, as if she could finally sense these humans meant no harm. The volunteer then reached toward her, and though her muscles stiffened, she didn't resist when he slid his arm beneath her chest. For the first time since the storm began, safety felt possible. The rescue team moved quickly, knowing the water could rise again at any moment. One rescuer carried the board with the puppies, steadying it with both hands as it floated beside him. Another supported the mother dog in his arms, her soaked fur clinging to his jacket. She didn't struggle. She just kept her tired eyes fixed on the board where her babies lay. Every so often, she let out a soft whine, checking they were still there. They navigated through the broken remains of fences and rooftops. A half-submerged car drifted nearby, and the current pushed against their legs like an invisible force trying to pull them away. But the rescuers worked together, forming a human chain to keep their footing. The mother dog lifted her head, ears twitching at every splash, every creaking sound of debris being carried past them. Even in her weakened state, her instinct to protect remained alive. When they finally reached the rescue boat, one of the volunteers gently placed the puppies inside a dry crate lined with towels. The mother dog was set beside them, and she immediately crawled close, curling her body around their tiny forms. The boat's engine rumbled to life, and as it pulled away from the flooded street, the rescuers glanced back at the destroyed neighborhood, silent except for the sound of the storm moving on. At the shelter, veterinarians were already waiting. They checked each puppy carefully, warming them with soft cloths and examining their breathing. The mother dog was given water and a dry blanket, though she refused to rest until every pup was back against her belly. Volunteers gathered nearby, some wiping tears they didn't bother to hide. They hadn't just saved a dog and her litter. They had witnessed a kind of love that nature itself had tried to drown, but failed. News of the rescue spread quickly. A volunteer recorded a short clip of the mother dog curled around her puppies in the shelter, their tiny bodies finally warm and safe. Within hours, the footage made its way onto social media. People from across the country shared the story, calling the mother dog a symbol of courage and sacrifice. Comments flooded in, offers to help, to donate, to adopt. Many wrote that they couldn't stop thinking about how she faced the flood alone, carrying each puppy through deathly waters with nothing but instinct and faith. At the shelter, the staff named her Hope, a word that fit her like a second skin. Her puppies, once cold and silent, now mewed softly as they nuzzled against her. Veterinarians checked on them daily, impressed by how quickly they were recovering. Despite everything she had endured, Hope stayed attentive, licking each pup and watching anyone who entered the room with cautious eyes. But there was no aggression, only a calm readiness to defend her young again if needed. One day, a family arrived with blankets, food, and a soft bed they had bought just for her. They had seen the video and driven hours through damaged roads to meet the brave mother they felt connected to without ever having known. The youngest child approached the crate first, holding a towel-wrapped puppy in his arms. Hope watched closely, then slowly rested her head on her paws, as if she finally understood that no harm would come to them here. As days passed, the shelter continued to receive letters, donations, and messages from people inspired by her story. Some said it gave them strength during their own hardships. Others said it reminded them that even in disaster, love can carve a path to survival. And somewhere in that warm shelter, surrounded by her litter, Hope finally closed her eyes, not in fear, but in peace. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to think about what this mother dog went through. In a world swallowed by water, with no shelter, no food, and no one to call for help, she chose to fight, not for herself, but for the tiny lives depending on her. Her strength was silent, her love unshaken, and her courage greater than the storm that tried to break her. There are countless animals like her, unseen, unheard, and waiting for a chance to be rescued. Some won't survive the next flood, the next cold night, or the next abandoned street, unless someone steps in. So if you believe her fight was worth it, don't just scroll away. Like this video to honor her bravery. Share it so more people hear her story. And subscribe if you want more real stories that prove love doesn't need words to be powerful, because heroes don't always walk on two legs. Before you go, remember, stories like this aren't just meant to be heard. They're meant to be shared. If this mother dog's courage moved you even a little, let your support speak. Hit the like button to help this story reach more hearts. Share it so others can feel what you felt. And subscribe if you want more powerful, real-life rescues that remind us what compassion looks like. Every view, every click, every share helps bring attention to animals who still need a miracle. Be part of their voice by staying with us for the next story. If you thought this mother's courage was powerful, wait until you hear what happened when rescuers followed a faint cry coming from beneath a collapsed bridge during the same flood. What they found left everyone speechless. Stay tuned. Our next story might move you even more.